Once upon a time, in a small sunny house with a bright blue door, lived a young boy named Harry. Now Harry was a wonderful boy in many ways. He had a laugh that sounded like tinkling bells and a smile that could brighten up the cloudiest of days. He loved to build towering castles with his blocks and chase butterflies in the garden. But Harry had a secret, a fiery problem that lived inside him. This problem was his temper. It was like a little volcano, quiet most of the time, but ready to erupt with hot, angry feelings at the smallest thing. If a toy didn't work just right, or if he lost a game, the volcano would start to rumble and shake deep within him. When Harry's temper erupted, it wasn't a pretty sight. His face would turn as red as a ripe tomato, his small hands would clench into tight fists, and loud, angry words would tumble out of his mouth like hot lava. He would shout and stomp his feet, sometimes throwing his toys across the room. These outbursts made his friends sad and his family worried. They didn't understand why the sweet boy they loved could suddenly become so full of rage. Harry didn't like this part of himself either. Afterward, when the anger cooled down, he would feel a heavy cloud of sadness and regret, but he just didn't know how to stop the volcano from erupting in the first place. It felt too big and too powerful for him to control on his own. His father, a kind and patient man with gentle eyes, watched Harry's struggles with a heavy heart. He knew that simply telling Harry to stop being angry wouldn't work. Anger is a feeling everyone has, like happiness or sadness. The challenge wasn't to get rid of the feeling, but to learn how to handle it without causing a storm. He wanted to teach Harry a lesson, not with stern words or punishment, but with an activity that Harry could see and understand with his own eyes and hands. He thought long and hard, looking for a way to show his son the impact of his angry words and actions in a way that would truly stick with him. One sunny afternoon, after a particularly big tantrum over a spilled glass of juice, Harry's father came to him, not with a scolding, but with a strange and interesting proposal. He led Harry out to the backyard, to the sturdy wooden fence that bordered their garden. In one hand, he held a heavy hammer, and in the other, a small bag filled with shiny, sharp nails. Harry looked at his father, confused. What did a fence and a bag of nails have to do with his temper? His father knelt down, looked him in the eye, and explained his creative plan. A plan that would change how Harry saw his anger forever and help him on his journey to a calmer, happier self. "Harry," his father said in a calm, steady voice, holding up the bag of nails, "every single time you lose your temper and have an outburst, I want you to come out here to this fence. I want you to take one of these nails and this hammer, and I want you to drive it into the fence post. Drive it in as hard as you can." Harry looked from the nails to the fence and back to his father's face. This was a very unusual task. It didn't feel like a punishment, it felt like a job. He didn't fully understand the reason behind it, but he agreed to try. The idea of using a real hammer was a little bit exciting, even if it was for a reason he wasn't proud of. The very first day was a difficult one for Harry. A friend borrowed his favorite red crayon and broke it by accident. The familiar heat of anger started to rise in his chest. True to his word, he stormed out to the backyard, grabbed the hammer and a nail, and with all his might, he hammered it deep into the wood of the fence. Bam! 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 It took a lot of effort, and when he was done, he was out of breath. Later that afternoon, he couldn't find his favorite superhero toy, and another nail went into the fence. By the end of that first day, there were more than a dozen shiny nails sticking out of the fence post, like sharp, angry quills on a porcupine. The next few days followed a similar pattern. Each time he felt his temper start to boil, he would march outside and hammer another nail into the fence. It was hard work. Swinging the heavy hammer took a lot of energy, and his arms started to get tired. He noticed how many nails were starting to fill up the fence. It was a clear visual reminder of how many times he had lost his cool. He looked at the growing collection of metal spikes and started to feel a little bit ashamed. The fence didn't look very nice anymore, all covered in these ugly, sharp points. Each nail represented a moment of anger, a moment where he had let his volcano erupt. Slowly, something inside Harry began to shift. he started to realize that it was actually harder work to hammer in the nails than it was to try and control his temper. Before stomping off to the fence, he would pause for just a second. He began to think, do I really want to go through all the trouble of hammering another nail? This small pause gave him a moment to breathe. He started discovering new ways to handle his frustration. He would take a deep breath, count to 10, or walk away from the situation that was making him angry. It was a small change, but it was the beginning of a very important transformation for the young boy. As the days turned into weeks, Harry found himself visiting the fence less and less. The bag of nails, which had seemed so full at the beginning, now stayed nearly untouched for days at a time. He was learning the power of the pause. When his little sister knocked over his carefully built tower of blocks, his first instinct was to yell. But then he remembered the hammer and the fence. He closed his eyes, took a big deep breath that filled his lungs with air, and let it out slowly. "It's okay," he said, surprising even himself. "We can just build it again together." His sister looked at him with wide, happy eyes, and they started rebuilding, laughing as they worked. His father noticed the change immediately. The house was quieter, more peaceful. There were fewer slammed doors and shouted words. Instead, there was more laughter and cooperation. He saw Harry sitting quietly and counting on his fingers when he felt frustrated with a puzzle. He saw him walk into another room to cool down when a cartoon on television didn't go the way he wanted. Harry was discovering that he was the boss of his feelings. His feelings were not the boss of him. He felt a growing sense of pride with each day that passed without him needing to hammer a single nail into the weathered wood of the garden fence. Finally, the day arrived when Harry could proudly go to his father and say, "I did it! I haven't lost my temper all day long." His father smiled, his eyes twinkling with pride for his son. "That's wonderful, Harry. I am so proud of you. You've worked so hard." The next day was the same, and the day after that. Harry had learned to recognize the rumblings of his inner volcano and could cool it down before it erupted. He felt lighter and happier than he had in a long time. The angry cloud that used to follow him around seemed to have drifted away, replaced by sunshine. The time had come for the next part of his father's plan. "Now, Harry," his father said, "for each day that you successfully control your temper, I want you to go out to the fence and pull one nail out." This sounded like a great reward to Harry. He was excited to undo the damage he had done and make the fence look nice again. With a pair of pliers, he went to the fence and started the task. Pulling the nails out was not easy. They were stuck deep in the wood, and he had to wiggle and pull with all his strength to get each one free. It was slow, hard work, but he was determined to see the fence clean again. One by one, Harry pulled the nails from the fence post. With each nail he removed, he felt a sense of accomplishment. He remembered the moment of anger that had put the nail there, and he felt glad that he was now in control. He worked diligently every day, his small hands struggling with the pliers until at last the very final nail was pulled free from the wood. He stood back, filled with pride, and called for his father to come and see. "Look, Dad!" he shouted with a huge smile on his face. "All the nails are gone! The fence is all better now!" He felt he had completely fixed his mistake. His father came out into the garden and put a comforting arm around Harry's shoulders. "You have done an amazing job, my son," he said, his voice full of warmth and love. "I am incredibly proud of your hard work and how much you have changed. You have learned to manage your anger, and that is a very powerful skill to have." Harry beamed, his chest puffed out with pride. He looked at the fence, expecting to see it looking as good as new. But as he looked closer, his smile began to fade. The fence wasn't better. It was free of nails, yes, but it was covered in dozens of small, ugly holes. "But Dad," Harry said, his voice soft and confused as he traced one of the holes with his finger. "Look at all the holes. The fence is full of scars. It will never look the same again." His father knelt beside him and looked at the holes too. "You are right, Harry," he said gently, "and that is the most important part of this lesson. When you say or do hurtful things in anger, you leave a scar, just like these nails left scars on the fence. Even after you say you're sorry and try to make things right, the wound, the little hole, is still there. Words can hurt people very deeply." Harry looked at the countless holes. and finally understood. He thought about the times he had yelled at his friends or his mum. Even though he had apologized, his angry words might have left little holes in their hearts, just like the nails had left in the fence. A tear rolled down his cheek as the lesson settled deep inside him. It wasn't enough to just say sorry afterward. It was far better to learn to control his anger before it could do any damage. From that day forward, whenever he felt the volcano start to rumble, he would think of the scarred fence and choose kindness instead, knowing that some wounds are much harder to heal than others.